Thank you. It's not on. Hello. Test. It's okay. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Can I have a show of hands? Who amongst you are from the healthcare system, working in AI, blockchain, data science? From healthcare. Okay. Who are not from Singapore? Meaning that you're not familiar with the Singapore healthcare system. Okay, so I'll go through some background of the Singapore healthcare system. The reason for my first question is that I noticed that there's a regulator in the room, so I have to check. Okay, so all I shared will be our journey and things that we have encountered, challenges, as well as opportunities. But before I go into AI and data science for healthcare, I would just give an overview of the Singapore healthcare system, a very short overview, and the challenges that we are facing in 20 years' time, 10, 20 years' time. Okay. Okay, so for those who are not familiar with the Singapore public healthcare system, we are being segregated into three major clusters, okay, looking after different parts of the island. I guess you have landed in Singapore, you know how Singapore looks like. So essentially, the three major parts of the island is the north, which is taken care of by what is called the National Healthcare Group. Okay, so that's one of the three clusters. And the west, as well as the central part of the southwestern region of Singapore, taken care of what is called the National University Health System. And Singapore Health Services, which is where I'm from, is looking after a large part of the population from the eastern part, the northeastern part, as well as the southern region of Singapore. So essentially, we are accountable for the health services provision as well as the healthcare outcomes for a large major part of the population. And the background for Singapore's public healthcare system is that we see about 80% of patients that comes through the acute and tertiary care system. But the reverse is true. That means we see about 20% of patients via our primary care clinics, which we call them polyclinics. We have Singhealth polyclinics, we have NHG polyclinics, we have National University Hospital polyclinics. We see about 20% of these primary care patients, so it's reversed. So in a nutshell, the data that we have is rich, extensive, broad, and really population-oriented. But we do have some constraints, and we work extensively with our partners in our healthcare system, as well as the private healthcare system as well. So Singhealth is under the wings of Singhealth. There is the Singapore General Hospital, the largest and oldest public hospital in Singapore, kind of like about same age as Singapore itself. Singapore is about bicentennial, right? So Singapore General Hospital was set up 2 years after the founding of Singapore, which is 1821. And other than that, we have the pediatric and maternity public hospital, the only one in Singapore, as well as two other comprehensive hospitals, the Changi General Hospital and the Sengkang Hospital. Under that, we are also looking after national centers of excellence, clinical excellence, National Cancer Center, the National Heart Center, the National Dental Center, Eye Center, and so forth. So meaning we do have a broad base of national data, national level data of population, of certain disease types for different types of our health ailments. Okay, so that is the background of where I come from. The challenges that we face, I think all of us are, from Singapore, we are fully aware of them. Most recently, there was a report saying that our fertility rate has dropped by 1.5%. Okay, so it used to be 2.1, which is still at replacement level. So by virtue of it dropping means that we have fallen below the replacement level. So we are facing a really critical stage of our nation's development, meaning that we are seeing this silver tsunami. We have been hearing the data tsunami, data science, artificial intelligence tsunami, and so forth. This tsunami we have to be really concerned about. Okay, so in 10 years' time, and it's not that long, just about 4 years ago, we were talking about what we will do in 2020, and next year is 2020. So we are really kind of like up to the brim, trying to get this crisis sorted out. In 2030, we are looking at 1 in 5 of our Singaporean aged 65 and above. And not just the fertility rate dropping by 1.5%. You will see another statistics, which is the mortality rate, which means people dying off, is higher. It has increased by 2.8%, if I'm not wrong. So essentially, our population may reach a critical point where it will start to drop from Singapore's perspective. So that is one challenge, and that challenge is the fact that we may not have sufficient manpower to take care of our population, our elderly. And also this is hampered by or exaggerated by the fact that we are all living longer lives. Although the death rate has increased because of higher proportion of elderly, we are all living longer lives because of better healthcare outcomes, better healthcare system. And the health services that Singapore is providing is amongst the top in the world. If not the first, I think it's the second. Could be behind Spain, if I'm not wrong. Also, we are facing the onslaught of highly educated demand people from the population coming to the healthcare system. Means the demand is extremely high, higher than what we have seen before. Medical advances also has accelerated in a pace that is too much for our comfort, but it is definitely a solution for us to be able to manage the increasing demand of the silver tsunami. Say, for example, in the past, if my father's generation or my grandparents' generation, when we see a doctor, the doctor usually has the authority, kind of really has the authority. Nowadays, folks like myself, if I see a doctor, I'll question, I have Googled for this. Is this really the right treatment? Or my auntie who just gone for MRI scan, prior to the scan, has the doctor given the right interventions by saying that she doesn't need an MRI scan, for example? I will have all these demands. And this is really coming onto our healthcare system. And I just mentioned the declining OH support ratio because of the aging population. My generation, you'll see 3 or more kids in the family, for example. Usually, my generation. Before that, it's even more. Now, my family, I would see probably 1 or 2 kids. And what does it mean? It means that in the future, when the parents grow old, each of them, if they have 2 kids, each of them can only support one parent. Okay? But you will have also your spouse. So that contributions towards the parent support ratio gives rise to this ratio. And we are really seeing a declining OH support ratio. And I've mentioned because of the declining population, healthcare labor shortages. So all this contribute to the need for us to look at new technology, and we have laid our bets on technology, artificial intelligence, data-driven technologies, evidence-based medicine, and so forth. So this is the journey that we have to take amidst this challenging landscape. Okay, how are we looking at this? We don't look at this as by itself an end to itself, artificial intelligence, data science. It's a means to an end because healthcare is really about providing care for the population. And in order to do that, the framework that we adopted is what is known as the learning healthcare system, where best practices has to be driven from an evidence-based perspective, and use cases has to be driven from a needs perspective. But all this has to be measurable. So that drives the need for data. Data as the key to drive this entire learning system, to be able to capture the knowledge and improve on health services continuously in an evidence-based manner, and not just by qualitatively speaking that it has improved with evidence. Okay, embedding the knowledge into the processes that we are doing in a continuous improvement and learning framework. Data has been, I think all of us know of this phrase, data is the new oil, and we are trying to harness them because we have a huge, abundance, extensive set of population data that can be used to look at from fundamental, basic science improvements like genomics, lab-based kind of improvement, to hospital bench, to the processes itself, to look at the hospital efficiencies and processes, as well as the financing of care, and the overarching improvement of clinical outcomes by improving care itself in an evidence-based manner. What we have is data. We do not want to be in a situation which is known as DRIP. Anyone knows what DRIP stands for? I think it's been shared earlier, right? Data rich, insights poor. Although we have data, we don't have any insights. And our minister has been driving this for quite some time now. And the key challenge that we definitely agree with them, with our leadership, is that for us to not reach that plateau of data rich and insights poor, trust is key. Okay, as you can see, data has to flow. Trust in what? Trust in data governance. Trust in the right models being used to achieve the right aims and right goals. So AI governance, data governance, and so forth form a picture of this. Opportunities is rife. There's huge opportunities, as you can see from this chart. Those who are not from the healthcare system, there's this repository called PubMed, which captures all the medical research, health services research, health sciences research, the front-cutting ones that you can see in publications, in journals, scientific journal publications. So I did a brief search quite some time ago, and I came to this exponential growth in terms of publications that's related to medical domain, related to health services, health sciences, that's related to artificial intelligence, and it has essentially mirrored the growth of artificial intelligence. Interest in artificial intelligence, in what we are seeing in these few years. Starting from, I think, all the way when they had the breakthrough with Google, having this AlexNet, the deep learning convolutional neural network that achieved breakthrough performance, and it has been growing since then. Okay, so we are seeing this surge, but we are also seeing a lot of this. So I don't have to belabor my point. I didn't put SingHealth in here. I think all of us from Singapore knows. But other than this, you have seen a lot of such breaches, data breaches, governance, privacy, and so forth, throughout the world. Okay, and Google's breach, I think, happened 2 years ago. So what essentially happens is that the government, the NHS, essentially issued a statement that the price of technology advancement, improvement of care should not be at the detriment of basic human rights. Privacy is rights of everybody in the UK. So that affects less than what we have seen, but these are the hiccups that we have along the way that we have to slowly build up the trust again as time progresses. We have, apart from data breaches, privacy breaches, we have seen a lot of challenges. Some examples are given here. I think about 10 years ago, I guess the IBM guys here, I think it was claimed then in some journal papers that whatever Watson is providing is the future of healthcare. That is the kind of miracle pill. But just 2 years ago or 1 year ago, there were a lot of news about IBM. One of the reasons that I hazard to guess out of this is because the situation which Watson has been in was actually, in fact, putting the cart in front of the horse. Meaning the use case is not the driver, but the technology appears to be the driver. It was first being pushed to the market and trying to look for use cases. So that's one issue that we have looked at. I think just now there was a very intensive and very engaging panel session that talks about chatbots and bots and in general. And I definitely agree with some of the comments that's being made, that there is a huge scope for improvement in terms of chatbots. I think Tay AI, when Microsoft first introduced it, faced some challenges. In fact, what they say behind Tay AI is that it is a wonderful algorithm. AI is terrific. Problem with it is implementation. Because it learns tremendously well. It threw out in the market within 24 hours, it came back and with all this nonsense. Because it learned all this nonsense. That what it says, Hitler did nothing wrong, I could put in a concentration camp of I don't know what kind of nonsense is that. So immediately, Microsoft has to apologize, pull out AI. So that was learning about how you actually can deal with chatbots, automated bots. And I think we have learned a long path, and we should continue to learn. Until the point, the reason is because I'm so concerned about this is because healthcare is a very peculiar industry, and I will explain why. It is really service-oriented, and it's really human-to-human interaction. Far more human-to-human interaction than what you see in the banks, than what you see in insurance companies, and so forth. Although it's a service processors, but it is looking after a vulnerable population. So to that extent, right, the way to look at it has to be much more rigorous. Google, I think the story behind Google was that the Google influenza detection using search query went into Nature, Letters of Nature, very prestigious publications, saying that it has a breakthrough, able to predict flu epidemic. 3 years later, CDC, Center for Disease Control, built a logistic regression model, outperformed it. tremendously. So what is it saying? The story could be related to garbage in, garbage out. All AI data science are the same, garbage in, garbage out. The failure of startups. I think there are startups in the company, in the audience, and I think we are well aware that 90% of startups may fail, highly likely, and will fail in the healthcare system. There are a lot of reasons for that. Okay, so these are all the learning points that we have to go through, challenges. So what are we heading for, utopia or dystopia? I hope that I'm playing my small role and all of us contribute this small role to make it towards the utopia rather than seeing chaos. Okay? Nadine was showcased a very successful robots project. I think it holds huge promise. But the way that we have to implement may have to take reference from how chatbots actually have failed in multiple systems, multiple occasions, and learning has to start from there. Okay, so learning, we have to learn, okay, but ultimately opportunities abound and success stories are tremendous. Okay, so in the public healthcare system, we have seen a lot of articles reporting hugely successful use of data to improve care. We look at diabetes, we look at cholesterol, looking at hyperlipidemia, improvement of care for that. We have developed a world-class, cutting-edge, deep learning system to be able to detect diabetic retinopathy anomalies in the eye. Okay, so this essentially helps to reduce the need for eye technicians to be able to identify deteriorations in diabetic retinopathy amongst diabetic patients. And something that's closer to my heart is the ability to improve emergency care. Emergency care is critical, not for all. Really, the real emergency care patients. Who are these patients? Patients who have heart failure, heart attack, cardiac arrest, essentially. Patients who have stroke conditions and major trauma, major bleeding. Okay, so what has been done was essentially trying to reduce that time to respond, and effective response, essentially, as well as to look at community playing a part in this improvement of care. Because you know, if there is a cardiac arrest that's out of hospital, within 10 minutes, the survival rate will drop exponentially. In fact, if within 4 minutes, if AED, which is the automated electronic defibrillating device, if it's not being offered to the patient, within 4 minutes, there will be exponential decline neurologically. Within 8 minutes, if you don't have a high-quality CPR executed, the guy's chances of survival will be very minimal. Okay, so you cannot wait for the ambulance to arrive. What has been done was to have created an app. I don't have a handphone with me. If all of you are not aware, there's this My Responder app. Go and look out for My Responder. What the app does is to look around nearby you, whoever has that cardiac arrest, nearby whoever has trained CPR, people with trained CPR, being able to identify the cardiac arrest patient and rush to that. And also the nearest vicinity where you can find an AED device. So all this will contribute towards helping the survival rate of out-of-hospital cardiac arrest patients. Okay, so these are some successful use cases. So I don't have time to go into this, but essentially what I wanted to say out of here is that we don't just look at patient outcome, your survival outcomes and so forth. We have to look at population health in general, and to have a sustainable healthcare system, we have to look at the cost effectiveness of care. Okay, so these are what is known as the triple aim, the usual traditional triple aim. The most recently, there was this idea of a quadruple aim that brings in the idea of service providers' welfare. Why is it important? Because as I mentioned earlier, healthcare is very peculiar, very close human-to-human interaction service processes. By that very nature, service providers is important to us. So service, healthcare providers, patient population, how we deal with it, we can't because we are just limited number of data science people. We have to collaborate out extensively. Internally, we have to empower our users to be able to use this in a responsible, knowledgeable manner. The art of artificial intelligence, I did say science, but there's definitely science behind. But responsibility has to come from the people who is developing it, using it, okay, and governance as well. Okay, so we look at technology, talent, and governance. Technology, we are. So this slide I wanted to share, even if I don't have time. The reason is because I wanted to call on a partnership and collaborations, people who are interested. We are trying to build a system that is based on the 3 Ps principle. trust is the key. Okay, trusted platform, where data that is being used for data science, AI, people who are responsible for data, they trust that platform. Okay, being able to flow to data science, artificial intelligence. Trusted peers, meaning within the organization itself, there has to be established trust. Otherwise, there will be huge inefficiencies. And finally, trusted collaboration partners. Okay, nowadays, the idea of being able to transfer data out to another collaborator and to do the AI data science modeling is getting less and less traction. Okay? The idea is trust. We have to build that. And to build that underlying, you have to build an ecosystem. You have to build the technologies to be able to support this ecosystem. Trusted peers, trusted partners, essentially trusted platforms. Okay, I also wanted to share this slide. We are talking this idea of citizen data science. Health data science, health artificial intelligence demands a lot of domain knowledge, domain expertise. Every single plausible medical condition, whether it's blood cancer, whether it's respiratory diseases, whether it's cardiac heart failure or cardiometabolic diseases, whatever, demands a lot of domain knowledge. Who else has the most domain knowledge apart from the doctors themselves, the clinicians themselves? But if they do not know the limitations of what we are bringing to them, the computer science perspective, the codes, whatever artificial intelligence nonsense, data science to them, they could be holding a scalpel without being trained. You can imagine a surgeon without being properly trained holding a scalpel can only negatively possibly affect one patient. But artificial data in science, if you just push it through without that responsibly understanding of the limitations, the knowledge behind that, some of that are more in-depth. I do want to share some of the visualization as well, which can easily be used to mislead what they call, there are lies, damn lies, and statistics. Okay, so I think you have heard of that. Okay, so it is a scalpel, it's a deadly instrument, and it's even more deadly. It could be a nuclear bomb because you are looking at more than one patient. Okay, so even the scalpel to a surgeon is dangerous. A data science model to someone who doesn't know how to use it or doesn't know the limitation behind it and just deploy it, that is even more dangerous. Okay, so what we have been trying to do is to create this citizen data science program whereby we train the clinicians, the doctors, the nurses, and also internally we have to build our capabilities for the practitioners, the data science practitioners. So our goal here is not developing of technology, it's really in implementation. Rigorous evidence-based health services research backed rigorous evidence, backed with clinical trials, could be pragmatic clinical trials, evidence-based kind of experiments towards implementation. We have learned a lot, okay, in the past, and the push from the technology perspective is strong. We have seen Watson and so forth, but we are holding back because we want that evidence to actually be able to sustain the implementation. What we are trying to drive is data rich with information and knowledge. This is something which I coined, not DRIP. Okay, we wanted to be able to drink from that water, that living water, and not. So I would say for healthcare, I would like to compare it to data being the new water, not the new oil. Okay, so I would like to end with this, saying that it is a tough journey for us, as in the health data science area. It's not all bright and rosy. Everybody say healthcare is one of the key areas where there will be disruption and there's a huge, immense opportunities. No, all of us need to have a hacker mentality. Not just hack through the data, hack through the math, hack through the technology, but hacking through being able to implement in the system to derive real-world evidence-based benefits out of that use of those technology. So that mentality has to be persistent, has to work through all, and especially also the governance aspect and so forth in order to lubricate and drive all this. So we need everybody here on board to be able to help us. Quantitative expertise, people with software engineering background, and definitely the domain knowledge in health data science, artificial intelligence. So this is the last slide that I have, a blatant advertising, but do get in touch with me because I'll be very keen to be able to collaborate with the best in this area to look at how we could jointly work together to improve the health of Singaporeans and in Singapore itself. Yep. Thank you.